Good morning, Jacob Delbora. It's Gareth
Hey,
McGlynn. Welcome to the Preconstruction Podcast.
hey, good morning, Gareth. How you doing?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing very well as well.
Good, good. I'm loving the background and the logo up in the corner.
Yeah, nice little marketing piece for us. So
Good man, good man. Well, listen, delighted to have you on board. I know that you are part of our BIM VDC series, which we're bringing to our listeners. We've already done two. One with I call him the BIM guru from St. Louis. He is Brian Myers up in St. Louis. And then the second one was with Tim Riefenberg down in Atlanta with the Beck Group. So you're going to be the third part of this, and I hope to get two more out over the next 2 or 3 weeks as well. So thanks for coming on board.
absolutely, that's awesome. I'm actually humbled to be following those two behind. So
Good man, good man. Okay, so listen, for the listeners that don't know you, give us a quick overview of what you're doing at the moment and where you're at.
yeah, so name is Jacob Dalbora. My role is director of BIM and FM services at McVeigh Mangum Engineering. I usually when I speak and I do things, I joke if that sounds like a made up title. It pretty much is because I got to make it up myself. I get to do the things that I love on a daily basis. So really, we focus on three vertical markets, and that's just 3D scanning, VDC services, and then BIM integrated facility management. So um,
Wow.
yeah,
That sounds
yeah.
that sounds like a mouthful. And are listen? We're going to go into that and how that came about and how you actually got to pick your own title, because I don't think I've had that before. That'll be an interesting conversation at the end. Let's jump right back to you're in Charlotte and you studied in UNC. You studied
Mhm.
architecture, graduated in 2010. Was architecture always on your mind through high school, or where did that come out of?
Yeah, funny enough, actually, I believe my parents say when I was like 5 years old, I told them I wanted to be an architect for some reason. So it was always in my mind. I wanted to go to architecture school, wanted to work in a firm. I think it's actually kind of ironic that I never actually became an architect, that I completely veered away from that side of licensure and stuff. But went through school, always part of the technology stuff in the school side, came out and definitely I learned early on before and during school AutoCAD and everything, but then when I came out, it was just, pure Revit. How do we get everything going? How do we make sure this is, done correctly?
Brilliant. Very good. And then architecture, obviously within Charlotte. I know UNC is a great university. How was the course itself? Did it touch on quite a lot of points? Did you start seeing more of VDC and BIM creeping into architecture during the course?
Actually, no. And it's a little bit of a gripe that I've had with the school and gone back and talked with them about it and everything. And um, it's interesting. There's two things that were really missing was the actual um, getting technology integrated as it was part of the profession into the schooling, but also the business side of the profession into schooling. And those two things weren't really focused. It was more of abstract design and trying to make sure that a designer coming out of school understood. Um, but we also, one of the most interesting things I think is we learned Rhino in school. And we learned
Okay.
Rhino because we were doing these free forms, we were doing all these things, and then when I came out of school, I was like, there's no reason that everybody needs to know Rhino. It's never going to come back. It's never going to be anything. And now Rhino's actually come back in and become such a hot topic with Dynamo and everything going on that it's just really interesting to see that come all the way back around.
Yeah, and was that a fluke on their part, or because I mean, when I was at college, I remember studying electrical engineering. The stuff that we were learning by the time I had graduated, it was like a dinosaur.
It was a fluke on their part, but it was mainly because Rhino was free
Yeah.
and it could be used for 3D printing. So we could
Okay.
absolutely do a bunch of freeform shapes, cut it up, and actually do laser cutting with it, or put it to a 3D printer and use it in a 3D printer.
Okay.
So
Very good.
it's
Yeah.
very interesting.
Very good. And then during your graduating at UNC, did you work on summers, do interns throughout the college?
Yep.
Give us an idea of how important that was and who that was with.
So first it was with this group called the Wilson Group, and little 5 main architectural firm. You could wear flip flops to the office. It was a culture that was amazing. But they did a lot of the stuff at the Charlotte Douglas Airport. They're actually now one of the main designers for the airport, and so it was really cool to kind of really get integrated into this process that I saw. But then all of a sudden, the buildings that were built or pieces that were made, I'm flying out of Charlotte Douglas every other week now, seeing these things that I was able to do when I first came out. It's really cool.
Very good. So you're basically picking up all the mistakes that was made.
Yeah.
By
or the issues that we ran into during construction. And I remember, and I'm like, why were we having a problem with that? That's,
Exactly. It makes perfect sense now.
right.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing. Good. Yeah. I mean, that's one thing that I'm hearing a lot of, whether it be estimating, pre-construction, BIM, VDC, is the importance of the internships and working and putting your education and what your book learning into practical use every day. And then you did a couple of internships, and also I wanted to talk to you about your Autodesk certifications.
Yeah.
When did you do them, and how were they? How important was it for upskilling? And give us an idea of what it's like working with Autodesk and on their certifications.
Yeah. I got into BIM technologies real deep and heavy when I joined RPA Design. I was already into it and everything, but really kind of started diving in. And the Autodesk certifications were more of, all right, I want to make sure that as we talk to other clients or other people in the industry as part of this firm, they understood that we knew what we were talking about, that we had that credibility. And really, I mean, if you go through a lot of those certifications back then, and a lot of my friends in the industry now, we've all gone through this, and it was really good back then. It was really neat to see, especially when BIM was either, people were doing it or not doing it. Who can you trust when they say, I know how to do BIM? It worked really well. And it actually was a pretty difficult test because there was a couple questions that you really had to understand the programs to actually pass that test. So it was good to see back then and everything. I actually haven't kept up on it now. It's interesting to me. I haven't gotten certified again in recent years. And I don't know if it's because I don't necessarily need that credibility anymore, or if it's just become more of a common concept between all trades to have BIM as part of a focus.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things. Obviously, with COVID, it's a key thing now. People have got a little bit more time in their hands. They're
Hmm.
asking me, "What should we do? Well, how should we upskill ourselves? How should I get myself ready for when this? How do I make myself stronger or more attractive as a candidate?" So, would you recommend Autodesk?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're looking for a job and you're able to go and get those certifications, it's not going to hurt you, right? I mean, be
Yeah,
able to have that on there, that does say it. I mean, personally, I mean, I've even hired people that have come in and said, "Oh yeah, I've done that all the time. That's great." And then when you sit them in the chair, it's like 6 months of trying to explain to them what they were telling you they already knew.
yeah.
Um, so it does. It gives you that credibility if you're looking for the job. Go ahead, go get it because it's going to be definitely worth it.
Yeah, and I think it gives you the confidence as well because, like anything, especially BIM BDC, if you haven't touched on it much during your education, to be able to go out and do that and get a bit of a deeper dive into it, and then once you step foot, like you did in RPA design, once you step foot in there, you're a little bit more confident because we all know the first job out of university, it's daunting. It's
Yeah.
like, can I do this? Is this the right thing for me? And that was good for you because you spent probably 4 or 5 years at RPA design as a BIM coordinator. Give us an idea of those first couple of weeks, months, even the first year. What was it like coming out of college, going in as a BIM coordinator? What were the challenges, the responsibilities?
So it's actually interesting you mentioned that part because one of my first things that we did, we came in and the interior design side was actually under a huge push to get some renderings done. And I was doing renderings left and right, and I knew how to use 3ds Max. Let's get it going. Let's do a render farm. So we go in there, and I'm promising this as, we're doing interviews. I can do this, not a problem. You guys got a push coming up. We get in there to find out they never mapped the materials correctly. So everything that I've brought in to do these renderings now, all of a sudden were just gray. And it was like, holy cow, this is going to be like 2 weeks worth of work to get this map correctly. But the renderings they were doing inside of Revit won't work then. So I was just like, well, my first thing I ever did was kind of a failure. I promised and promised, and then all of a sudden said, oh, well, so it was interesting, but obviously it is what it is. I was able to kind of help push them through with the Revit rendering to make sure they got it done. Um, it's interesting because coming out of school and doing a BIM coordinator, the one thing you got to make sure that you start doing is you actually start listening to people too, because you'll get really frustrated. But if you're high and mighty about stuff, they're not going to want to hear you. They're not going to want to come to you with questions. Um, there's a lot of a people person with BIM coordination and BIM management, I should say, because a lot of the people in the firms are not really going to be good enough, even though just to go Google it, they're going to come and ask you. So you're going to have that patience too.
Very good. Yeah, and it seems to me even more evident within pre-construction as a whole, not just BIM and VDC, is that ability to communicate and collaborate, and then obviously back it up with some solid knowledge. And what were the main responsibilities? I mean, were you within an architecture firm? Were you given some of the heavy lifting to do, or did you were you literally handed projects from day one?
Yeah, actually, really did, it's an interesting concept because I think if you talk to a lot, and actually Brian Myers mentioned the conference built, which is basically you go there and you have probably your top 500 to 800 BIM managers in the world between coordinators, VDC groups, and you start talking to everybody. And there's a common theme that everybody was in an architectural practice. They started pushing BIM inside of architectural practice, and then they finally gave up because the architecture practice never really listened to them. And then they went and started their own firm and started making their own money. So it's really funny the trend you see with this, because BIM management and you get pushed into it inside the design side, you also start becoming a production person. And even though you need to go and work on templates, you need to go work on processes, they're like, well, we have this deadline coming up, so we need you to push on this production because you're really good at this program. And it becomes a very, you know, harsh position to be in because you're really stuck in between a rock and a hard place. You're like, all right, I want to get that project done, of course, but if we keep doing this cycle, we're never going to get over this. Hey, we just want to we need to keep doing production. Um, so it's interesting. There is a very big common theme between a lot of BIM managers out there that either have now their own consultant practice or are on the contractor side with pre-construction and being able to showcase it, because contractors are like, oh, we can save money by doing this. Yeah, come on over. We'll pay you, and you guys can tell us how to do this, and we'll try and save some money.
Yeah.
So.
That's interesting. I think Brian and Tim both touched on this. I mean, BIM. Everybody thinks BIM VDC is very all about technology, but actually, it's not. It's about the ability to guide and manage change within your own firm or within the third parties that you're working with.
Yeah, it's a lot of just understanding the industry and understanding where things can be applied to remove, heartache. I think that's the most interesting part about it is we're seeing a lot of these niche companies kind of pop up, solving one problem at a time, because the ideas behind all of it can be applied to each of these little problems. And instead of one company trying to solve all the problems, you're having people really kind of concentrate and really remove that from their workflow. So
And I think that gives you an idea of the amount of issues that need solving, that everyone's picking one or picking two. It really does give you an idea. And give me an idea with RPA design. Give me an idea of your collaboration, your communication with, you'll hear me talk about the three-legged stool, with the owner, obviously you, the architect, and then the GC. How was the communication or the workflows? How were they all managed?
So that's where I really excelled on the architectural side. Is we finally decided this information needs to be shared between everybody. We can't silo it. We can't just do this weekly handoff to engineer, and they're always a week behind. So we started, putting in Revit server. We started putting in these ways where our engineers were live with us and we were able to see things going on. Just so we actually had consultants out in South Dakota that were working with us on the architectural side. And they were live in the model with us, and we set up new protocols where they could be in and we could be in, but the model was actually up on Amazon Web Services. So we had, these open protocols, these closed protocols. It was really interesting, but that's why we needed it, because we wanted to make sure the owner got the best solution. So we were actually, mitigating a lot of the risk of, oh, we traded this a week ago, but the architect continued working. Now the engineer is trying to catch up, which was a big part of the industry that was being solved now by Autodesk. So
Very good. Yeah, and that's important as well. And then give me an idea. Obviously, 5 years with RPA. That was with the architecture firm. I think you did one more year, and then you jumped to the engineering side of things. Talk me through that thought process.
so during RPA's tenure, I actually had a moment where I started beta testing a lot of programs, part of the BIM side of what we were doing. But we got introduced to this one software that pretty much turned a light bulb in my head, and it was something that would have been perfect for facility management. It was the perfect handover, perfect delivery process. And Phil Reed, who is head of Enscape now, or actually is just pushes Enscape, he's head of Reed Thomas Consulting, introduced this to me. We flew out to Portland, beta test it, and it was incredible technology. From there, I was like, holy crap, we got to solve this facility management issue. So the whole time I was doing this, I actually created a business unit inside of RPA called RPA Pulse. It was focused on BIM-FM. I actually started digging into the facility management side of the industry a lot, and then kind of came across the idea that facility managers really don't care for an architect to come in because they change everything. They have a conversation a lot better with engineers. So I started branching out and looking to see how we could actually grow this concept, but go through an engineering process. So McVeigh Mangum was looking to grow services. They're looking to grow nationally. Uh, they're a great company and forward thinking, started Revit in 2008. So it's something that they've always kind of pushed. And about 3 years ago, I came in and started this business unit where we said, all right, we have the ability to go to facility management. Let's show you guys from an engineering standpoint why this is so important. And now, I mean, we basically focus on existing buildings, new construction, and then just operations.
Very good. And then the three areas: BIM for facilities management, 3D scan, and VDC services. Give us an idea how they're broken up, and do you, even if you could break it up percentage wise of how you spend your time?
Yeah, so right now, it's broken up pretty much 50% is VDC services, right? The market is looking for as much as possible, and that includes everything from doing the model management, clash coordination, looking at trade modeling, creating the shop drawings, fabrication drawings for them. We use BIM Track as our tool for coordination. We want to make sure that all project managers and BIM consultants are involved. A lot of the pre-construction process is really a problem when you just put a bunch of BIM consultants in a room, and most of them are graduate out of architectural school, spent 2 years in a firm and decided they wanted to go do their own BIM consultancy. Their project managers for electrical trade need to be involved. So we require this. We put them on BIM Track, and it's just this really neat way of making it go. What we're doing with that is now also focusing on the fabrication and prefab modular. So that's 50% of our industry. And then it's about 25-25 split for the other side. 3D scanning, all the scanning goes in for getting the point clouds. We have our own team, it's internal, and then we create the BIM models. And then facility management is all about the delivery. It's all about taking this information that we have created during design and construction and putting it into the hands of the facility managers. We have to make sure that they have valid information and that it's entered correctly into their systems so they can actually operate. And it's amazing if you go look at the statistics, how inefficient the construction industry is. Facility management industry is just as inefficient, but they're not a revenue producing industry.
Yeah.
They are all overhead for companies. So this all becomes even harder when you say, well, that, you know, that department of my company doesn't make any revenue. Why do we invest money into it? And it's basically because that department can shut down every other department if it doesn't run correctly, because if that building doesn't run, you're not going to be able to have a company to actually run at all. So
Okay, Jacob. So just give me an understanding if so BIM VDC facilities management, do you specifically target ground up companies and ground up projects, or can you go back on existing projects and create 3D models?
So we do both, and really the philosophy is that you want to actually implement one system across all of a portfolio for an owner. That way, they're not running three systems. They're not being inefficient. You want it as efficient as possible. So what we see a lot of is, or actually what we try to do is, for new construction, implement the standard. We can create the standard. We create the requirements for deliverables at the end from contractors. So they have to deliver this type of BIM model, this type of data. It has this asset registry. It includes all this information. But that way it actually kind of integrates straight into the digital twin, which is pretty much the term now that the industry has taken on, is digital twin, and it integrates directly into it. But we also don't stop there, and that's why we have a 3D scanning vertical market for ourselves. Is we can go in, we can capture the as-built of a building, but we also go through and document all the assets. So we will find all the VAV boxes, we will find you know, all the runs of or all the plumbing systems, valves, stuff like that, to the major equipment, the air handlers, and then find the information about it. So we will go get, you know, the service tag numbers, the serial numbers, the model manufacturers, and then also pull as much information we can for those. Because as we do that, and then they're able to run their new construction projects and their existing buildings and the same programs and understand what they have, that's where they see the most gain from this type of digital twin implementation.
Very good. And is there much pushback, or what? Because I think you mentioned return on investment as well. I mean, is there much pushback when you bring this kind of idea to them?
So it's interesting. It's kind of weird because a facility management department within a corporation or running a building is a non-revenue department. So they will always be one of the first to look to get cuts, and it's tough because if what healthcare is the example I use it in, and basically if an MRI goes down in healthcare, that's millions of dollars per day that they lose out on revenue. So there's special systems that MRI must have to remove the exhaust from the MRI. So if that malfunctions, their department is responsible for those $1 million per day going out. So what we see is, risk mitigation, the same way contractors use BIM as risk mitigation, remove issues from field before they find them in the field. We try to solve it that way. We're trying to reduce, what could go wrong in the future and really, hurt the company from making revenue. Also, we do see ROI in the sense of, you have an operating budget, it costs this much to operate this building. We can actually reduce that because we're removing inefficient processes. We're removing, invalid data in there. So it actually is seen as an ROI, but it's also hard to sell it because they don't have revenue. They just have budget.
Yep.
So what we're trying to do is really get them to understand this, but the new construction process also allows us to implement that standard. Every time you have this new project, go ahead and start making that deliverable, start handing it over. And we've actually gone in and done almost a master plan scenario. We've looked at whole campuses and said, all right, you're going to renovate these areas in the next 3 years. Don't worry about capturing any of the information. When those renovations happen, that's when you want that deliverable. These are all existing, nothing's going to happen to them. So let's go capture the information ourselves. And then these over here are going to be demoed and new construction is going to come. So we're not going to worry about capturing any of that information. That's where we kind of start seeing a aggregated process of, delivering this digital twin back to an owner.
Yeah. And do you see particular industries? You mentioned healthcare and higher education there. Is there particular industries that are more receptive to this?
So yeah, we've seen it definitely more receptive inside of a manufacturing industry, industrial. They have requirements just like a healthcare industry, but they also see they actually also use a lot of lean processing, which kind of goes into the same idea. But we're seeing more healthcare come across it. Uh, Higher ed is a really good one. A lot of them have put it in place. Right now, I don't know what higher ed's going to spend their money on. So they've kind of stalled, and we're going to wait and see. Because if they go virtual, the operations of their buildings on campus isn't as much as important anymore.
Yeah.
But we're starting to see it quite a way all the way through. Commercial real estate is starting to be very interesting with the idea of how do they manage their assets and how do they know what assets they have. So we're trying to span across all industries and really see it.
Very good, very good, very interesting, and it's exciting space. So you obviously got into it from the architecture firm. It's a space that really gets you up in the morning. What's exciting to you right now, and what's exciting to you in the future? How do you see it changing or pivoting without giving away any secret sauce or?
Oh yeah.
Don't be.
It's funny. It's the secret sauce is like, okay, I actually want more and more people to talk about it. I want more and more people to discuss it because the education of this idea is the biggest point right now. How do we make sure people understand what we're trying to achieve? The most exciting stuff that I see coming through is just IoT and the documentation of IoT. It actually gains a lot of momentum if you have that foundation of a BIM model, and the BIM model creates the asset registry. I keep referring back to Brian Myers in your podcast because I actually watched it this morning again. He talked about how BIM isn't model. It's not always 3D. It's about the information and the documentation of it. So what happens when we create a 3D model and we hand it over, the contractor hands it over, is all the elements in that model already have an ID associated to it. So we automatically have the ability to create an asset registry. All the IoT systems that are being developed need an asset registry. So now we have basically created the foundation that this air handler ID is this, and it will be the same ID for your BAS system, your lighting system, your energy management system. And now we're removing the inefficiency of data migration. You're not having to repeat data integration over and over again. So that's really exciting because the two are kind of starting to converge and become one. And more, I think COVID is actually starting to push IoT forward because there's an idea now of how do we remotely facility management. Well, if we have all the data from sensors inside of a building, we can pull those in. We can actually use that information to make decisions. So I think BIM and the digital twin create such a great idea of we should have this enforced beforehand. And as you put these IoT sensors in, you already have the idea of what that sensor is going to, where is it running, where is it located. You have the correct information you need.
Very good. Yeah. So you reckon that the biggest challenge will be just getting people to understand how it works and getting word out there on how it can help, how it can get a return on investment, and long term, how working from the 3D model will be the future for all registries.
Yeah. Yeah. So actually when I started this business unit, I even went to the board of my company and I told them that we're probably still 3 years ahead of the trend, right? We're starting this and we're going to do this and we're going to create these other verticals so we have revenue-based areas. But this facility management idea is still young and we're still about 3 years out from it being a main topic. And that brings us to today where the term digital twin is all over the place now. It's thrown everywhere, and even with that asset registry, like you just mentioned, blockchain has now entered the whole idea too. So they're using blockchain to actually track all these assets and see it all together. So um, I think we're at the tipping point right now of this is going to be a flood of, all right, how does the construction industry and the operation industry, how do they respond to what COVID was? And I think BIM has a huge, huge area in that.
Brilliant. No, it's exciting stuff. There's no doubt about it, Jacob. So let's step away from all the
Yeah.
technology and the geek stuff now. Talk to me about Charlotte, North Carolina. As you may know, we do a lot of recruiting in the Carolinas, North and South, and we relocate a lot of people to Raleigh, Wilmington, Winston-Salem, Charlotte, Charleston. Give us an idea. What are the key, what do you most enjoy? And I know you're a Charlotte guy through and through, but
Yeah.
what do you most enjoy about it? What would you say would be the kind of the caveat for somebody relocating there?
So, for a while now, Charlotte has actually become a very young city. A lot of millennials, a lot of Gen Zers, they're moving on in. Now, the thing has been awesome about it though is there's this pride of the city that has kind of taken over. If you go talk to a Charlottean, if you go talk to somebody that lives here, they're proud of this city. They're proud of what this city's grown into. The areas, the little neighborhoods that have grown up. It's really quite incredible. And we had a light rail that came in about 2010 that stretched from the center of the city down to the very south of the city. And that has absolutely improved everything about the city. It opened things up. Everything along that light rail is now the hottest places to be. And then they extended it all the way up to UNC Charlotte. So now all of a sudden our college is connected down to the uptown area. This city is incredible. They really understand who lives here and provides this idea of we're going to be this young, vibrant city. And the really cool thing is we lost out on Amazon and a lot of other headquarters because we weren't tech enough, right? We were always competing with Raleigh to be that tech hub, and they were kicking our butts. I mean, it's pretty obvious. We have now turned they took that seriously, and we've turned ourselves into a little tech hub ourselves and really have pushed it. So to see how they took that criticism and said, all right, well, if we're needing that to become a better city, let's do it.
Big time. And I love how sports orientated it is. I mean, even the Charlotte Knights baseball game, we were there for about 5 or 6 weeks last year, and it was the year before, and I absolutely loved that. Sitting in that stadium, right in the center of Charlotte with the skyline in the background, it was beautiful.
Yeah, it's incredible. They brought that in, and it was a great idea. And what's been great is the skyline heat continues to build around it.
Yeah,
So there is only when they first got it, there was only a couple buildings that you could kind of see, and our skylines boomed over the past 3 years so much that it's now populated. David Tepper now owns the Panthers. He's done a lot, and there's quite a bit going on now where he's putting these practice facilities. I think he's spending $3 billion or something on the practice facility down right across the border of North Carolina, South Carolina. We're getting a soccer team. Like, we see what Atlanta's done with their soccer team, and we say we want that. So it's really cool. It's really, I mean, the city is just taking everything and booming with it. We're wanting headquarters to move here. We want this, consistent growth.
yeah, and it's got a huge following for soccer. I am a massive Liverpool fan, and I was actually in Charlotte for the Champions League final against Spurs,
Yep.
and I went to the Valhalla, and it was unbelievable. It was literally, obviously the Valhalla fits about, it was ticket only, so it was maybe 70, 80 people, but the whole street and all the bars around it, it was like it was like you were walking into like a European city. It was amazing.
That is awesome to hear. That is like incredible here because I'm a pretty big soccer fan myself, and it's just amazing to see that start coming through because it's an incredible sport, and overseas across the pond it's such a following, right? I
Yeah.
mean, there is such a dedication to it, and I'm a I'm a Florida Gator through and through. So our SEC football is like the only thing I can compare to. And it's amazing how people overseas just live and breathe their football. And I want it here. I want it. I want that as part of our culture. So
Yeah, yeah, very good. And would there be any area in particular that you think, because that's one thing I didn't understand and didn't realize, it was just full of 21 to 40-year-old young people and young families. Is there any particular up and coming area that you would recommend people move to, or even consider, or maybe even three or four areas that you would consider if you were moving to the area?
yeah, so it's interesting. So I actually live in South Carolina, um, and commute into the city every day. So our our house is across the border. I mean, it's I think 20 miles south of Center City, so it's not necessarily like I'm driving very much. Um, and down here in the Fort Mill, Rock Hill, Indian Land area is just incredible. It's more of the open space, get a little bit more of a yard. So if you're looking to move out and kind of grab some stuff, but what has happened is the urban sprawl has happened. So all the outlier cities in Kannapolis and Belmont and now Rock Hill and Fort Mill, all those areas have become an incredible place to live. Those cities have invested their money. Um, Kannapolis has now got, they have their own minor league team as well, and they built their own stadium. They've revived their whole downtown. So it's really cool to see the growth of what we have here now, spreading out to those cities and allowing them to grow as well.
Brilliant, love it. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of it. If it wasn't for my wife, I would move to Charlotte. She's a city girl and she doesn't want to leave. But just before we wrap up, Jacob, is there any advice that you would give your younger self? That's maybe someone's either in high school or in university at the moment or in college that is considering BIM VDC. Is there a particular area that you think they should go into? Should they do architecture first and then branch into BIM VDC? What sort of advice would you give?
So, and this is interesting because I'm on the facility management side. I see a lot of construction. I don't see university as necessarily a must. Um, I actually see quite a bit of the need for us in the fields to actually have people there. But one, I would say learn construction.
Yeah,
Your greatest ally is going to be learning how this stuff goes together and how people used to do it, because a lot of this BIM VDC has been, well, you used to do it that way, but this is why we can do it this way and improve, everything we do. The other thing I recommend is get on Twitter. There is a huge group of followers of people that are on Twitter about BIM and VDC and digital twins. Start following them because it's a very open community, very, very open community. We share secrets, we help each other solve problems. You're going to learn so much more than just trying to Google something. But if you sit there and read through these people and watch them, I mean, as soon as you follow one, you'll see the conversations start popping up, and it's incredible. I've actually learned much more myself from just being on Twitter and having these connections. So I
good.
highly suggest if you're younger looking for that. And then also don't hesitate to reach out because, like, again, we're a very open community. We want this to grow. We want younger people to come in and push it even further. So we're willing to invest our time into, helping other people grow as well.
Love it. Yeah, great advice. And was there anybody, Jacob, when you were growing up, any influencers, any mentors that really helped you and guided you through into where you're at today?
Um, I really have to say is Phil Reed when I was at the RPA Design, and his company actually rented a little bit of space from our office and stayed in our office, and he's got to be the number one reason where I am right now. Um, the information that he introduced me to, the people he put me in front of, and he got me the ability to start speaking on stage at certain events. And everything about that is I've taken as even from his way of business and working with others, I have learned from and used it within my own. So I kind of
Brilliant.
owe just about everything to Phil Reed.
Big shout out to Phil.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good man. Maybe we'll get him on. It'd be a good interview, I would imagine, to have him on.
Yes, he is a character. You would absolutely love him too.
Good man, good man. Well, listen, Jacob, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time. I think it's been a great insight into not only the architectural side of things, but also how you've pivoted into the facilities management side, obviously on the engineering side. And that, that to me is crucial to get out there, for people to understand that this is a part of the construction, the construction ecosystem, but also it's going to be a really important part of it. So thanks very much for your insight.
Hey, Gareth, thank you so much. This is awesome, and keep it up. This has been a great podcast. I've loved every single one of them so far. So thank you very much for having me.
Have a great day, Jacob. Speak to you soon.
All right, thank you, Gareth.